Welcome to the Explainer. It's a question every single one of us has probably thought about at some point. Once you file your tax return, all that personal info, where does it actually go? Who's legally allowed to take a peek? Well, today we're going to dive into the laws in Bangladesh to get you some straight answers. All right, let's just cut to the chase. When you file that return, packed with all your personal and financial details, is it really a secret? Who has the actual legal right to look inside? Okay, to really wrap our heads around this, let's use an analogy. Imagine all your tax filings are locked away in this super secure digital vault. And this vault, it isn't just protected by some simple password. No, it's guarded by a very specific set of legal rules that spell out exactly who gets a key and who doesn't. So, the law kicks things off with one really strong, super clear principle about that vault. You can think of it as the golden rule for your data, the foundation for absolutely everything else. And here it is, laid out in Section 309 of the Income Tax Act. It's actually pretty straightforward. Everything you submit for your taxes, your statements, your documents, all of it is legally confidential, period. That's the default setting. That's the starting point. And what's so interesting here is just how absolute the language is. When the law says things like shall be confidential and shall not be disclosed, those aren't just suggestions, they're commands. This creates a really powerful default position of privacy for every single taxpayer. Now, this isn't just a suggestion. This protection is a serious legal shield, and it's so strong that it can actually override a bunch of other laws. What that means is that most authorities, and even most courts, can't just show up and demand that a public servant opens that vault and hands over your files. It's just not that simple. Okay, so the fault is strong. We get that. But it's not totally impenetrable. The law gets that sometimes. For the whole system to actually work, certain people need a key. So, let's take a look at who gets one and, more importantly, why. So, who gets the first set of keys? Well, courts can get access, but only when they're prosecuting a criminal offense. The Anti-Corruption Commission? They can get in for their own investigations. Civil courts also get a key, but usually only if the government itself is part of the lawsuit. And of course, the tax authorities can get in there to prosecute tax-related crimes. And it's really important to note that this access isn't a free-for-all. It's super specific. The law makes a distinction, allowing disclosures for general criminal cases that fall under the Penal Code, but also having a separate path for the Anti-Corruption Commission. It's all about making sure that tax data can be used as evidence when it really counts. But wait, the list of exceptions doesn't stop there. Access is also carved out for some really serious stuff, like inquiries into the conduct of public servants. And this is a big one. In the fight against major financial crimes, your information can be disclosed for investigations into both money laundering and terrorist financing. All right, so we've talked about crime, but it's not all about investigations and prosecutions. There's a whole other set of keys to the vault that exist for one simple reason: to make sure the government's own machinery keeps running smoothly. Yeah, a lot of this is really just about, internal government housekeeping. It makes sense, right? The comptroller and auditor general needs access to do audits, other government departments might need it to recover debts, and different tax agencies like customs and VAT, they need to be able to talk to each other. It even allows for internal investigations into tax officials themselves, which is all about accountability. And in today's world, where money moves across borders in a split second, this next point is absolutely crucial. That digital vault we talked about, turns out it has an international key. If Bangladesh has a treaty with another country to stop things like double taxation or tax evasion, your info can be shared across borders to make sure those agreements are actually working. Okay, so we've seen the rule, and we've seen the pretty long list of exceptions. So after all that, what does this actually mean for you, the taxpayer? What's the real bottom line here? Look, it all kind of boils down to three main ideas. First, never forget that golden rule. By default, your information is private. That is the legal bedrock. Second, you have to understand that there are a lot of very specific, legally defined exceptions, all those keys to the vault for law enforcement, government operations, and audits. And finally, and this is so important, don't forget that you hold the master key. The law never stops you from sharing your own tax info with the bank for a loan, or with your lawyer, or with anyone else you choose. And that really leaves us with one big final question to think about. While the law gives us this strong framework for privacy, the sheer number of keys to that vault, for court cases, audits, international agreements, it just shows how connected all our financial data has become. It really makes you stop and wonder, doesn't it? In a world that's built on sharing data, how private can anyone's financial life truly be?